Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unf cking. I'm your host, Zack Hamilton. Of course, you guys know that already. What you're really looking forward to is who is in the hot seat, what are they cringing about, and what are you going to learn today? And I've just been so blessed, I think, here recently with the different CX thought leaders that I typically probably wouldn't be engaging with because they're, in different countries, different continents, and may have not been able to meet them yet. But the power of LinkedIn is bringing us together. And so for my next guest in the hot seat, Orinta, welcome to the podcast.
Be here.
It's been so just fun engaging with you over the last couple of months. I'm not for sure how we found each other, but just the authenticity that you bring to LinkedIn about CX and how you've really kind of conquered CX has been so refreshing. So I'm so looking forward to our conversation today.
Yes, me too, Zach. It's been a pleasure engaging with you, and it's really nice to find sort of kindred spirits on LinkedIn. That's what it's great for, isn't
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. So, Orinta, you've listened to the podcast. I like to set the scene for where are we about to have this conversation because it typically just doesn't show up. Like you have to have that kind of that that space of psychological safety to be able to talk about some of these topics. So, where are we having this conversation at? Is it at a bar, a pub, a favorite restaurant? Are we having a walk? Like, where are we doing this?
Oh, I'm not, unfortunately, I'm not at a pub right now, but I would definitely be at an English pub having a cold, pint of English cider, the boozy one, not the,
Oh,
not,
this you
not the
definitely need
cider
it.
you've got.
It is so hot over there right now.
Yeah, yeah, it's really hot. I'm boiling. We don't have air cons, and yeah, just keeping yourself cool. But it would definitely be somewhere nice and quiet and relaxed. But we're having conversation now, and that's great too.
That's right. That's right. Well, Arenta, you have done it all. You've seen it all. You've helped everyone, uh, excuse me, with their CX strategies. And so ultimately, we always have those kind of CX topics that come up, whether it's from, an executive leader, maybe a peer, maybe it's someone we're working with or a cross-functional team member. What is one of those topics that's making you cringe right now that you absolutely want to unfuck in the hot seat today?
Yeah, do you know what it is? It's so my background is in startups and scale ups, and what's really bugging me is the working in silos thing when delivering customer change. Even when companies know that delivering customer change is what they need to do, that sort of working in your own corner and not achieving anything effective is what bugs me because there is really another way. So that's my main thing. And I think, like I said, this is a problem that can affect different kinds of, different sized companies. It doesn't just affect corporate, it doesn't affect small company. It just really is with the best intentions, people drift away into what they're doing and really lose sight of what is the main thing that will, make an impact on their customer's life and how they use the product and also to that business as well.
I love that this is a topic because, like you, I've been working in the startup world for tech companies the last kind of couple years. And ultimately, I think everyone loves that startup spirit where, you roll up your sleeves, you're in the trenches. There's really no job description for anyone. Like everyone is doing everything. And to your point, everyone is working so fast that ultimately ends up in silos and then we actually create more customer friction unintentionally for our buyers, for our clients. And if we were just to slow, to your point, if we were just to slow down just a little bit and say, hey, look, we're trying to redesign this specific process so that we have a better onboarding process and time to value is much quicker, we wouldn't have to go back and redo so many things. So I'm curious, like in your experience, why do companies struggle to slow down when they're in the startup phase?
Look, I think it's a tough one with startups because they are literally usually created for growth, right? And hitting revenue targets, hitting specific targets that they agree with their investors they're gonna hit. And a lot of the times that comes at an expense of creating a very long-term strategy that is beneficial to the customer, that is beneficial to the business. Always think of not a startup right now at all, but Amazon, right, as an example. Like I don't believe in some sort of, really sort of big values that they've got around customers, as in doing what's right for the society or whatever. None of that. They know that a profitable business is one that is built for the customer, right? That's why they process effective. That's why people keep using them. It's a very large scale company that's proven that that is the profitable way of operating. However, if you have, your sort of exit plans and you are trying to hit these targets they agreed with your sort of share, it's very difficult to think long term and base your decisions. So you keep, anywhere from your tech to your process, you keep building things in this like really wobbly foundation. Because of course, as you said, when you 5, 10, 15, 20 people, it's quite easy to sit around one table and be like, where's our customer fixture? What can I do? It's so dependent on the individual and the sort of collective. But as you scale, that's where the problems really start. So if you don't have good systems, you don't have good tools, you don't have good attitude, the right attitude, and you don't keep iterating, then, things gonna break. And like you said, you're gonna need to go back and fix this process that, there shouldn't be a need to fix it because you've done it right from the start. But it is much harder to do than it is to say, of course, as we know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just think just in general, it's not just startup life, but I think it's every corporate life right now where brands are fighting quarter to quarter. CEOs are fighting quarter to quarter just to keep their jobs. And to your point, in a startup life, there's significantly more pressure because you have so many investors' capital on the line. And look, it's no different than investors in corporate America or corporate life. But when it's a high growth startup, it's almost growth at all costs.
Exactly. It's not sustainable growth. However, I don't know how it is in the US right now, but in the UK, there is a really massive shift to more sustainable growth.
Hmm.
Simply because of, changes in taxation and things like that. There's lots of different reasons. Businesses can't afford to just go blindly for growth.
Yeah.
And so it's becoming a little bit more like, looking at your P&L and like, how can we become more profitable sooner? That's not a case in every startup, but it's definitely more of a trend that we're seeing, which actually makes me happy because I think there's something to be said about more sustainable growth, different kind of pressure on people that work in these startup environments. Because like I said, it is hard. You do try to think about your customers, but you also, a lot of the times, the runway that you've got with your cash is limited, right? So it's
Yeah.
not just about how to keep your job, it's how to keep everyone's jobs.
Yeah.
So I think that is additional pressure. So I think for me is what I feel passionate about is trying to build something sustainable in terms of CX processes and thinking that is scalable, that does remove some stress, further down the line rather than, oh, it's broken, let's fix it. Let's be a bit more proactive about it. And, I think more people start seeing the benefit of that, but I think we're changing the market, we're changing the thinking as we go. So yeah.
I think that's brilliantly said. I think the quote so far, my favorite one so far, is it's not just about keeping your job, it's keeping everyone's jobs. And it's so important because you do take on that added pressure as founders, right? And leaders. And I'm with you. I think we're seeing the same thing over here in the States where it's not about growth at all costs anymore. They do want to see reasonable time of, some of the key metrics that we hear a lot here is like customer acquisition cost, right? Payback period. A lot of it now is like, what's your sales velocity? So, how efficient are you with gaining new clients and then essentially their next time to upsell, cross sell?
Yeah.
And so, I think it's phenomenal. I think we're starting to see a lot more CXers in these startups and these scale ups really looking at the experience. And how to create better buying experiences, but also time to value so they get an upsell cross sell quicker.
Yeah, it's about finding those sort of I guess the touch points in your customer journey that sort of make it or break it when it comes to building trust and generating revenue as well. So it could be about converting them into a paid customer. It could be about, retention. It could be about cross-selling, upselling. And so all of those points that you need to nail for a customer to be able to enjoy their experience and therefore spend their money with you,
Yeah,
because there is less money generally because of,
yeah.
different economic situations right now in different countries. So you got to make sure that you nail it so the customer actually does choose to spend their money with you rather than with your competitor, because there are plenty of those, right? And I think it's another thing I always get quite annoyed with, that sort of term loyalty. I don't believe there's any brand loyalty, because I think it's just preference and how useful you are to the consumer, right? You usually take up a very small proportion of someone's life. So if you create too much friction, if it's too much of a hassle, then they're just going to leave because there's someone else doing it better. There's someone else doing it cheaper, so if you can't do it cheaper, you need to do it better somehow. So
Absolutely.
I'm a big proponent of like looking to your retention, but stop calling it loyalty because it isn't.
I'm with you. I don't, and this is probably another topic that we could unfuck is the loyalty piece here because I'm with you. I think it's more around like infatuation. Like I'm infatuated with a brand for a specific period of time. And then as I grow older, do something different, different brands I become infatuated with, not loyal to.
Yeah,
And I think the other piece here is just net revenue retention.
yeah.
Are we helping you deliver? Are we helping you solve the most strategic problems within your organization? Time to value, you understand how to leverage the platform. And because of all the value creation, I don't even really want to say ROI. I want to say value creation because
Yes,
it
I
should
agree
be
with you. Yeah.
ongoing and continuous, not just a one time measurement. Then that's when you start to increase your net revenue retention. And a lot of companies here, or a lot of investors here, Renta, are looking at net revenue retention, and they want to be able to see that not only can you sell to buyers, but you can service them well. And your net revenue retention is a reflection essentially on what's the value they're getting post sale.
Yes, value is a great thing because ROI is such a tricky thing, right? If you're just making a business case for a change, you talk about cost of inaction, all that stuff. So I agree with you. You can look at it that way. Sometimes it's easier. And ROI is this sort of moment in time that you're basing something that's going to deliver value on the information you have at the time, right? But long term, it's all accumulative. If you improve this experience, if you really improve the moments that really matter to customers, then you're going to see that return long term. And that's not always easy to put on paper, but the companies who have this, who has this culture of like making things better for customers, they do outlast the ones that don't generally. Unless you're in some sort of, I don't know, utilities and you have where customers don't have much choice. I don't know, that doesn't exist much anymore, but if you don't have much choice, then that's the only time when companies can really sort of
Yeah.
treat their
Yeah.
customers badly because they don't have a choice. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely right. It's that locked in effect. When you think about this, okay, so this kind of let's get to the player tips here. So if you think about,
Mm.
hey, we're a startup, we're a scale up, unfortunately we're spotting these silos. What's the first player tip to start to unfuck them?
The first one is to set the scene, and by that I mean for the leadership to set the scene. Because I'm the first person, and I'm preaching to the choir here, to encourage CX professionals to take accountability for how they're performing, right? Because you're the ultimate influencer, you're the ultimate translator and relationship builder, right? You have to perform in that role well to achieve change, to drive change. But it's really hard to do that when there's no sort of permission or that sort of direction from the top. So the leadership, in this case, founders or sort of C-suite and just senior people in the company have to say, you know what, CX is not owned by any one person. It is sort of a part of culture that we have. We are customer led. We'll always aim to make decisions that are good for the customer, right? And then you have to say, but we do have these CX champions, whatever the form and shape it takes, whether that's a head of CX or whatever. You have to have people who champion for the customer, but not in that sort of like clappy, customers are suffering. It's more like, what's actually not working and what can we fix? But you have to have that permission. You have to make that part of your culture. And if that doesn't exist, it's very hard for people to actually drive change. So that's my
Yeah,
first sort of tip.
I love that. And I think the other piece that I would just tack onto there is as you're getting that permission from the top down, you also have to have the permission of and the psychological safety of freedom to fail, right? And it's hard, like it's really hard to fail because for a startup that could be massive impact. But if you're not failing, you're not learning from your customers and you're not building. So that's the only thing I would tack on to that.
Absolutely. If you're still in a company that thinks of mistakes as something to shame, then that's really not the right place to be, right? It's got to change. And a lot of companies do that well, where it's like you make mistakes because you learn from mistakes and you do better. So
Yeah.
that's absolutely agree with you. I think moving on to sort of part two is metrics. It's picking metrics wisely. The one where CX contributes and sort of picking the ones where, I mentioned that before, they represent this touch point, a moment in time where you really build trust or break trust with the customer, and where that moment also can generate revenue for you. And you measure it. It can be your retention, it can be your on-site conversion, it can be, adding something to your basket, whatever is appropriate for your business. And not ever shutting up about those metrics. Metrics are not some private things that someone in the dashboard looks. They've got to be visible. They have to be translated into team objectives. They have to be translated into individual objectives. How do I, as someone who works in company X, whatever, know that I'm contributing to retention, contributing to conversion? How do I know that I do this? Only if my business objectives as an individual, as a team, contribute to that. So you need to make them really relatable, really visible, and cascaded to team priorities and individual priorities too. So, retention isn't something that one person looks at. It's got to be discussed all the time if that's what your company cares about, right?
Amazing. I love that you're calling this attention to metrics, and I love how you're talking about the business outcome part of the metrics because ultimately, experience is not the outcome. Experience is a lever to achieve business impact, right?
Yeah.
Behavior ultimately is the outcome. And what we're trying to do is drive positive behaviors of our clients or of our consumers. Like that's the outcome. And ultimately, I love this trust metric that you're bringing up, especially in scale ups. And I think one of those KPIs that often go overlooked is like your sales stage on stage conversion. Because ultimately, a seller's trying to earn trust of we're going to help you solve your most strategic problems. And the question is, do the buyers trust that you're the right partner for them? And so if you just look at your stage on stage conversion, that's a great indicator of do they trust you and what you're saying? Because ultimately that feeds into the onboarding plan, time to value as a client, and so on and so forth. And so I think the stage on stage conversion is an overlooked metric, but it's definitely a trust driver.
I think metrics has become sort of, I think you're right about this a lot. It's like a lot of the times you almost can't connect the insights that you've got to the metrics that you have. But fundamentally, I think metrics have to represent your customer's behavior. And a lot of the times your customer behavior in terms of how they navigating their account, what they're doing in their basket on your website, tells you more than a lot of insights. Insights like an added color, right? There's so much data that you can have. But you can see a lot from your customer's behavior. And then you need to dig deeper and understand, like, okay, why did they take that action there? Why didn't they do what we expected to do? All that customer journey thing that sometimes you create and then customers treat it completely differently. So metrics, smart metrics are fundamental to not only measuring your performance, but understanding of how the levers that you pull really sort of impact the outcomes of your business, right? And you're right, customer experience isn't the outcome. It's the outcome of good work of a lot of people building customer journey, but it's not really the outcome for the business.
This is amazing. What's player tip number 3?
I think it's about systems then, right? So if you have the right metrics and if you have visibility of those metrics and you constantly talk about them, you've got to have the right forums and tools for that as well. And people overcomplicate this so much. There's so many tools that you can buy and all this complexity, whatever. I really advocate for simplicity. You need the right forums as in the right meetings. I don't say that you should, I'm not saying you should have 100 meetings a week, but what I'm saying is you have to have the right people in the right forums talking to each other to really inform each other's actions and decisions and drive change. And then you have to have the right tools, where in this case, if you're talking about success CX, you can easily log your customer friction. You can log your outcomes. You can involve the right people. And it doesn't need, 10 different tools. It's just one tool that works for your business, well, you have the visibility and you can fundamentally close the loop, right? But I think again, it's a thing that needs to be iterated all the time, because if you're 10, if you're 20, 100, things need to change. People stick to the same ways of doing things and then sort of get surprised when they don't work anymore. So I think it's fundamentally it's about visibility, and it's about involving the right people and hearing the voices that you need to hear to fix that friction. And you need to just constantly review what you're using in terms of tech and in terms of the sort of people interactions to make sure that it's still working for you and your business at a place that you're at the moment.
I love how you just mentioned this about the systems that you're using, because sometimes I've seen so many organizations just complicate it. I mean, ultimately, to your point, systems can be so simple. And my first rule of thumb is, before we implement a system or a solution, like, what is the problem we're trying to solve?
Yes.
And does this solve it?
Yeah.
Um, and I think the systems are the way in which you work within your organization. That's actually what culture is. And so every company has a system. Now, it might not be running at an optimal level, so you may have to have some influence on how do we optimize the system. But I love your point is, don't overcomplicate it. You don't have
No.
to have the shiniest tool in your tool belt. System that works for you and your organization.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think you've seen these companies that buy into these tools that cost them, thousands of pounds, dollars a year, and then it doesn't get used nowhere near to its full potential, because that full potential isn't actually needed, right? So
Yeah.
you can actually figure out cheaper ways and better ways to do it. And I think there's a different topic for someone else, but AI is a good example. So that's the newest one, right? It's like the new buzzword, the new everything, value there. But like, what is the problem you're actually trying to solve? Like, why
Yeah.
don't jump to it like a magpie to a shiny object?
Absolutely. Orinta, this has been such an amazing conversation. I actually want to go deeper with you on this, but I'm also being cognizant of the hot seat and the time. So if any of our if any of our listeners want to go deeper with you on conversation, where can they find you?
On LinkedIn, really. That's where I hang out. Don't hang out anywhere else really these days.
And
But I
you're
post
so
about
highly engaging, which is great.
Yeah, just let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversations going. And I do like to see other people's content on CX and anything else startup, scale up related, because that's sort
Yeah.
of my world. So yes, let's keep in touch.
Amazing.
It's been a
Orinta,
pleasure.
likewise. Thanks so much. Come back soon.
Bye.